Setting up your Facebook meeting. 10. Here we go. Go, 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 go. Go, go, go. Hi, welcome. Today is February 13th, 2021. My name is Kevin Fitz, and I am the host of this live Saturday noon podcast called Fittsian Dialogues. Our guest today is Rachel Flanigan. Hello, Rachel.
Hey, Kevin.
Happy Lunar New Year to you. Yeah. Very good.
Happy
I'm going to just
New Year.
read something here, and then we'll get into our conversation. This is a little bio about Rachel. Rachel is a meditation teacher and facilitator based in the Sierra Nevada mountains. She teaches active breath-based practices for meeting everyday life with meditation. Currently, she is focused on teaching practices for the dream state and energy exchange. Rachel was raised in the feminist pagan community and became a student of Buddhism in 1996. She's especially interested in making meditation instruction available to people who may be excluded from spiritual communities due to class, gender expression, or psychiatric history. Rachel also facilitates voices and visions and self-exploration groups as part of the Hearing Voices movement. Welcome, Rachel.
Hey, I'm happy to be here today.
Great. Well, I just want to start off and let people know I discovered Rachel, or I met Rachel early last spring in a Hearing Voices group. And people know early last spring was when that time that COVID was on the rise, increase around the country. I think, Rachel, why don't you say hello and tell us about the circumstance, what was going on with you, about a couple of weeks before I met you. Tell us a little bit about that if you want to.
Okay, we're gonna get right into it.
Let's get right into it.
Yeah. I did have COVID and first came down with a high fever March 8th. So
March 8th.
almost a year ago now. So I did have COVID pretty early on in it. And it was really a life-changing experience for me. I became over about 3 or 4 weeks, I got sicker and developed COVID-related pneumonia and hypoxia, and had very low oxygen to the point that I almost died. And I think what we wanted to talk about on this show was was my difficulty in accessing actual medical care for my COVID with a psychiatric diagnosis history.
Very good. Well, let's go into that. I do have a question. Where were you? Were you staying in the Nevada area before March 8th for the previous couple weeks, or did you travel or what?
So I did not travel, but I was exposed to multiple other people who did travel. I was a teaching assistant for a graduate course, and 2 of my students who had been in China had been told to quarantine by the local health department, I have one of my very close friends was at a Women in Data Science conference in Santa Clara a couple of weeks before I got sick. I don't want to put it on her. I have also know someone else who was at a conference a few weeks before. Or lots of academics go to conferences over winter break. We had another friend who was told they were confirmed exposed at a conference. And then I myself didn't travel, but I was a big part of participating in and organizing an international symposium for women in entrepreneurship that my university sponsors. So I didn't travel, but the world came to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very interesting.
Yeah.
I first heard about COVID, I think in mid or early January, and then bam,
Mhm.
2 months later, then Americans like yourself are coming down with it. What what was the experience of sort of one, discovering that you had it, two, in your community and the people that you intersect with, sort of understanding? I mean, there were still people, I think there's still people trying to understand what COVID is, how you catch it, how do you keep from catching it. But then also too is, you know, getting support from people, because I don't know anybody. You were the first person I ever met. Now I've known several people who've gotten COVID, but you were the first person I ever met who had COVID. But I didn't meet you in person. I intersected with you in digital social and support communities.
Um, yeah, and that digital space did become very, very important to my being able to access some medical support. Also, it was a really trying time, and I do acknowledge that, you know, the medical profession was scrambling and people didn't really know what was happening yet in March. But I came down with a high fever in that second week of March, and I went to the health center, the student health center at the university, where I'm a PhD student, and I also worked. And they did, at that point in time, they did have masks in the entrance for people to put on before you entered the student health center. They did have masks and hand sanitizer, and signs asking people to use them if you had these symptoms, which I did. But as soon as I got back to the room with the nurse practitioner, she looked at my file and looked at my mask and said, "Oh, that's not necessary. You can take that off."
Wow.
And, you know, I was just worried about exposing them because I was already very sick. And I had an uncontrollable cough, and I coughed. Unfortunately, I coughed on her, which I've felt I have felt really badly about, and I was trying not to, but I couldn't help it.
So her
But
reaction was, take off the mask. It's not really necessary. I've seen here, I've looked at your file. So
yeah, so
what was
the
the reaction around the medical professionals you intersected with and your support community?
so it was really difficult. They looked at my file and asked me some questions about anxiety, which you know, I've definitely had the diagnosis alphabet soup, but I don't really consider anxiety to be one of my issues. But you know, they looked at my file and said, "Well, we see that you've seen the psychiatrist before, so would you like to go see the psychiatrist now?" And I kept, you know, I told them I have these two students who are already in quarantine, and you know, that I have this cough, I have this stabbing pain through my chest, and they were unwilling to give me any sort of medical evaluation, and sent me away with a bag of ibuprofen samples, because I refused the referral to the psychiatrist. So I ended up going back to the student health center 3 or 4 times, and not really being able to get care over weeks until the last time I went there was about 3 weeks into my illness, and by that time I got a different nurse practitioner who was really sad. She was completely freaked out and overwhelmed. And at that point she said, "We're so overwhelmed, I didn't have time to pull your file." And just started physically evaluating me, and basically got really scared and diagnosed me with pneumonia and told me to go to the ER because my blood oxygen level was low enough that I should be hospitalized. At that point, I was really concerned because I live at high altitude, and I could tell that at that moment, that when I was sitting there with her, that I was doing better with oxygen than I had in a while. I was like, this is a high point for me, like being here talking with you right now. And she was like, well, if this is a high point, that's really scary, because there's nothing we can do with you here, and your oxygen level is already too low not to be hospitalized.
So did you go to the emergency room?
I did not. So at that point in March, there wasn't a lot that people knew. There wasn't a lot that people knew to do a year ago. So I knew that if I went to the ER, besides being in the environment of the hospital, that what they were going to be able to offer me was supplemental oxygen or putting me on a ventilator. And that the hospital really, at that point in time, the hospital really seemed like a place to die. It was scary. And she could kind of tell, and she kind of looked at me and was like, you're not going to drive yourself to the ER now, are you? Though there's nothing we can do for you here. And the one thing I've kept trying to get is a chest x-ray, and no one would approve me for a chest x-ray, and still no one will approve me for a chest x-ray to see the extent of what happened. Their reasoning for that is that the chest x-ray is used to diagnose pneumonia, and they already were able to diagnose me with pneumonia without an x-ray.
Oh, okay.
So they won't approve it now. But this nurse, one of the reasons I didn't go to the ER was that I was able to use supplemental oxygen at home with the help of a friend who has oxygen, because he's a glass artist. And this nurse, she was so creative, and she said that, she said here where I live, that they end up treating people for altitude sickness a lot, which is also hypoxia.
Right,
and since
right.
I had hypoxia and they had no treatment for what I had, if I wanted to try it with her, she was going to try treating me the way they treat people with hypoxia.
Yeah.
Which I did.
So how many days was this like hell, like at the worst, where it was at 6, 7, 8 days? And then how did it subside? And then how did your community, when your friends and colleagues started learning about this, how was that accepted or understood?
It was a lot more days than that. It was a lot longer than that. Acute, I guess I can't say acutely. When I think it was really only one night when there was a high, when I feel like it was only one night when I had a high risk of dying.
Okay.
But as
I think my nephew was infected with it, and he said, for 10 days it was the worst. I don't know how long he had it for, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but
from the initial high fever and then going up and down with the fevers, that it was about I guess it was about 3 weeks of fever, then escalating to hypoxia and really being in the acute hypoxia state for a couple weeks, but then that continued for months, and I have nowhere near the level of physical health that I did before this. And I think this is something people don't understand about COVID. I am an economist, and I do work with the entrepreneurship community, and a lot of people are really concerned about the trade-off of shutting down business activity. And a lot of people my age really have this idea that I'm healthy, I've done all these things to have a strong immune system, or I'm young, so I don't have risk. And it's really the people with underlying conditions and pre-existing conditions, maybe people who aren't in the narrow, disgusting, traditional economic sense, being at the peak of productivity to society to begin with, who might die. Therefore, it's not worth it to slow down business. But before I had COVID, I believed I had a great immune system. I think I had a great diet. I was very physically active. It's a big part of the Reno partner acrobatics community, and doing acro, sear wheel, handstand, clowning, all these community-based great circus arts things that we have here in Reno. That was a really supportive community for me, and I was training and working out in different ways multiple times a day, both bike commuting and going to Acro Enso, this circus arts center. So I'm someone who had a really high level of physical health before I got sick. And now I can't. It was months and months before I could really walk upstairs without getting dizzy. I can't bike commute. Where I am compared to where I was a year ago physically is just a complete reversal. And I was someone who was very active and health conscious and did not have underlying health conditions before I got sick.
That's terrible news. I'm sorry that you've gone through this and are experiencing that setback and that decreased functionality. So how did your So you talked about the file and initially where they told you you didn't need to wear the mask. Thanks very much. Why don't you go see a psychiatrist? How in the experience of the sort of the teaching and the facilitation and the group work that you do, not related to your academic work, but to the other things that you do, teach classes, facilitate groups. How was that around, I'm Rachel and I have COVID. Really? This is new to us. I don't know anybody who's ever COVID. How was that? How did that was accepted and you got supported from your friends and in these communities that you intersect with when they learned that you had COVID?
Well, I know it's a very scary thing, and I got strong reactions from a lot of people, and I'm still getting reactions from people. Having COVID definitely, divided all my social circles, and so through hearing voices groups, I was able to get some medical care that I wouldn't have otherwise. I did speak in a group when I was sick and make a connection with a doctor in Brazil who was just there to participate in the meeting. He's a medical resident in a big hospital in a big city, and so he was really swamped at the time too, and just calling into the meeting during his break. But he made time for me to call him on Zoom and evaluated me. And gave me some breathing tests I could do at home that would tell me when it was time to go to the ER. And I really appreciated that, because I hadn't been able to, access that kind of medical care here in the US. And I didn't pay him. He was very busy with his job, but he really just said, I'm a doctor and it's my responsibility to do this wherever in the world you are. Which I think is a good motive, is the right attitude.
Very interesting. He was a doctor and he
Doctors.
was attending a hearing voices group. Very interesting.
There are all sorts of people who hear voices.
So tell us a little bit more about, I'm again around that COVID thing. I'm really sorry. I didn't know you before, so I know the COVID affected human that you are. And I'm sorry that has been such a major issue and setback. That's rough. And I know there are other people who are going through similar issues with pulmonary issues, smell and taste, and who knows whatever else they're discovering about neurological issues or whatever. What if I wanted to ask you, what is the Hearing Voices movement? What is a hearing voices group, and how did you become a facilitator? Disclaimer, I am now a part-time co-facilitator of the Tuesday night group of a network that Rachel founded. Tell us a little bit about this world.
I didn't found a network. I co-founded that group.
Oh, okay.
It's not my intention to run a network.
Oh, okay. So you co-founded Mountain Hearing Voices group.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about a Hearing Voices group and how you got engaged in it.
Okay. So a hearing voices group. Is just we call it a social support group. So it's a place for people who have unusual experiences with voices and visions, or things that really put you outside of what's often called the consensus reality. People who have a very different way of being, or an unusual experience, whether that's a big one-time experience or ongoing experiences in their life, and they want to have a place to explore those experiences with other people who have those experiences. And there's no judgment or labeling or trying to explain each other's experiences for each other. So we have people who come with all different types of what might be called frameworks, or just people have all different types of understandings of what they're experiencing. And as facilitators, we just accept that. We don't have anything where we're trying to get everyone to agree on what the experience is. We're
So
all
the
self-defining.
So framework. So my introduction or understanding of this is I came, early on after being psychiatrically diagnosed, I came to my experience of some of the things that Hearing Voices talks about educated by psychiatrists, delusions and hallucinations. That was the framework that they loaded on me at 19 years old. You have delusions and hallucinations, and we need to treat these to get them out of you. Which they never successfully did, because here I am 56 and still having hallucinations and delusions. But I don't really like that framework particularly, because I think it suggests something that I'm not sure I agree with, which is the pathology of mental and emotional experiences. But so you got engaged with this. Before COVID, there was an awful lot of hearing voices that were meeting locally, or there were hearing voices that were meeting, like AA meetings, meeting in local civic centers or local metro areas or towns. And then during COVID, a lot of those things closed down and moved online. The group that you are co-founded, Mountain HVN Hearing Voices, that started out as an online group. Is that right?
Yeah, we started online in 2018 with a group of people from Nevada and Utah, and we've grown. We've grown throughout the country since then. We recently had a meeting with 20 people, and there were people from New York City, Austin, Portland, San Francisco, Missouri, Georgia, North
Montana.
Carolina. Yeah. Vancouver. Yeah, it's really grown, but we did start online, and I had wanted for a while to start a local group in Reno, but some other people had started online groups, and I was going to those for myself. I wanted to start a group because I wanted to go to a group, not because I'm a do-gooder who wants to save some type of people. I wanted to participate in groups, and to do that in Reno, I would have to start a group in Reno. But instead I got involved with some of the early online groups, and decided with some other folks to start another online group, so that people who I really liked the flexibility of the online format, and felt that would work better with my lifestyle than committing to trying to be in a physical location at one time. And it just seemed like a very needed opportunity for people who travel or live in more rural areas. And I had already been convinced in the other online groups of the types of real connection and relationships that could form in the online space. So yeah, we were an early adopter of it before the world was forced online.
Early adopter. That's great. I find the experience, particularly, bring back the idea of framework. I find it very interesting that that the group ethos is suspend judgment of where one comes from, or the language that one uses to talk about their journey and their experience, that's wide open and open to them to lead how they want to describe that or define that. I just find that simple idea just really empowering. I've been I've been hospitalized against my will in hospitals several times, and how I had to play the game to get discharged is I had to repeat the insurance financial billing diagnosis code back to them to tell them I have now accepted that I have, this categorization in the, diagnostic and statistics manual. And this is how I'm going to manage my issues related to that framework. And then, if I talk in their language and I understand this is what you've subjectively laid on top of me. Okay, I parrot that back. I understand now that I have this disorder or disease or whatever. I'm good to go now. Though other times, when my first couple of experiences, no one ever told me that you just got to parrot their framework back to them and let them believe that you're really, mean it and you're really convinced by it, and then do that. And then later on, I realized, okay, I parrot back to them. Then when I get home, I just toss it right in the trash. Delusions and hallucinations are just, there's nothing in that to unpack and that's meaningful. It makes me sound like I'm broken and defective, and I don't like that at all. And so I'm constantly seeking, particularly, outside of the so-called science or evidence-based psychiatry, for something other that's meaningful, that may not have an end, but pulls me on like a journey and a process. And some of that is exciting, particularly because I've met some of the people that I met in hearing voices groups, and particularly you. I want to say when COVID came on and it was creeping across the land, and I was feeling extremely dystopic and hoping for a scientific miracle, on the macro level with COVID, and then also with some of my own issues, and realize there's, particularly with my neck problems, like there's only so much that I can get diagnosed, and there's only so much things they can do. I need to find another door. And what I discovered, and I really appreciated it, was returning to things that I had earlier treasured, like mythology, like, narrative of elders, like previous cultural experiences of some of these things, these others, these voices, these beings. And I really credit you, and what you were one of the main people that helped me sort of look into that and really embrace that through some challenging times. And I really credit you for helping move that forward, or at least open my door where I think I was just knocking at the door of allopathic medicine or science, trying to explain the meaning of life to me and why, And so I'm very happy. I appreciate that tremendously. It got me back into reading Joseph Campbell and some of his works on mythology and talking about extreme states from different cultures. So,
thank you. There were people who helped me before also, and you've also helped me in my ability to open up and speak really about some of the things that I experience that that I would have I would have held back from the group more before because of judgment, or really like lacking the skill to be able to speak about some of those experiences.
So tell me a little bit about your skill development, or your going from novice to, where you are now, and understanding some of this world, some of the ideas about, what are called voices, how you found something that's meaningful and profound in your way of sort of coping with it, like voice dialogue. Tell us what we mean by what that means to you, the idea of voice dialogue.
Okay, that was like a lot of questions.
Well, let's just explore voice. We're going to hearing voices dialogue, and someone says, "I'm really working on my voice dialogue," and
okay, so some people, I don't know, some people with more training might get on me about using that word, or using it incorrectly, but so the way I use it, I was really inspired by the work of Rufus May, who one of my co-founders of the group actually got to study with. So when I talk about that, I'm talking about this process of talking for people who actually do experience hearing voices in the literal sense of that they are voices, and that can be internal or external. And something I've learned from being in these groups and facilitating these groups for a few years is just how many different types of experiences people have. So I really don't think that what I experience is universal to everyone who hears voices. I think there are a lot of different types of voices people can experience that range kind of from like internal to external, of like the inner child, or your inner critic, or then more of a literal echo of people from the past, and then moving outward to projections and or psychic phenomenon, or just being very sensitive to other people around them. And then there's the ghosts, demons, interdimensional beings.
the interesting
There's
stuff.
there's so many different types, but the voice dialogue is it's a practice of deciding that that this being that's talking to me, that I'm going to engage with them and talk to them and ask them questions and try to evaluate their responses and try to learn from them. So so I've had these unusual experiences since childhood, and when I was about 20, and I started studying Buddhism when I was a teenager, and I was in Japan, and when I was in my early 20s, I had a really profound meditation experience, and unfortunately I tried to get guidance on that from the people that I was with, the community that I was meditating with, and was told that I was too young to have that type of experience, and that it was disrespectful to their great teacher who had studied for something like, and the teacher was also a white Western guy who, you know, had traveled around the world and studied with these great masters for 35 years to have this teaching to give us. And also they knew I wasn't really reading the book that we were supposed to be reading. I just wanted to show up to go to the meditation group. So, but I had this really profound experience, but that was the first time that people used the word psychosis on me and said, if you had that experience, that's the definition of psychosis, which is obviously which was very different from my teenage, you know, image of, you know, some guy with a knife in an alley talking to himself, you know, or whatever. As like, no, you don't understand the beauty of this. This has nothing to do with psychosis. But so for me, it was this experience of a spiritual experience that was misunderstood and then being separated from the spiritual community. But I did start on this journey to meet a lot of teachers and try to eventually find one who could tell me something about my experience. But so I guess this is a long way of getting around it, but I'd had these experiences for a long time, and you know, what is spiritual is also a really complicated issue, and a lot of it, I really don't believe there's a dividing line between what's spiritual and what's not. The individual, I think, has the power to interpret it and decide how they will use the experience. But I was very committed to my meditation practice, and really dedicating most of my free time and resources and energy to being part of the Buddhist community for a long time, but not really finding understanding or support for these experiences. And after I had a child, I really had to refocus my life on my career and my family. And kind of moved further and further away from that. And I was in a very difficult situation with my marriage, and with grad school and expectations for my life and my career, and really feeling like there were a lot of people in my life pulling me in different directions that were pushing me to not be me so that I could be successful in the material world. And so I felt all this conflict, and that's when this really intense and scary kind of voice being experience came down on me in a different way than it had before. And my experience became much more intense and immediate, and we would, in the Buddhist tradition, we would say wrathful. And so my tradition that I practice in also has this great tradition of protector beings. But the protector being is not really just a protector of Rachel and whatever she wants, so that, you know, I'm going to...
You mean it's not like Santa Claus?
No, it's not the protector of my wish to I don't know, make a lot of money and have the prestigious job and buy the house in the suburbs that my family wants and the car for my mom that she wants, and all these things. It's protection of my commitment to my spiritual path and my commitment to my connection to the altruistic universe. And so I began to have this change in my experience, which was very scary when I was in this really stressful time of conflict in my life. And I was on the quad Googling things like, what does it mean to hear a voice? Is it like, will it go away? What? And I'm a scientist, so I ask very scientific things like, what's the prevalence of voice hearing? And, you know, a lot of my family was not that open-minded, and they said, you know, that hearing a voice means one thing, and it means you're schizophrenic.
Right, right.
But that's not the state of where the current scientific research was at. So luckily, because I am a scientist and I searched with very scientific terms, I pretty quickly did find a lot of these resources about the Hearing Voices movement and the experiences of other people talking with their voices. And you know, looking at the options that were available, I decided that those were the people I want to know, and that was the direction I wanted to try to go in. And so even though I was at the time I was very afraid of the feeling of this being watching me and the sound, and you know, and it very much pointed out to me how, you know, how my life was in conflict with my values, and how, you know, people in my family and people that I was working with in my department in grad school, while they might have an idea of what was best for me, or they might say that they had good wishes for me, but they were really pushing me to further and further away from being myself. And so it was really like I really just kept engaging in the dialogue with this being, of why are you here?
Was that one of your first questions?
Why do you want these things for me? What do you think will happen next? You know, what is our history? And that was really interesting to me, because it did over time, it did open up and tell me these stories about how, you know, how we had been together on our meditation path, kind of as warrior brothers in a past life, and you know, how we had the same teacher, and so, you know, how their actions in their life led them to be in the state they are now, and, you know, where I was, and what and an important thing I asked too was what I could do to help this being, and it told me that I could learn from it to myself, be a strong protector, and to become a protector for my family, and that would that would help give this protector being more freedom to come and go. But so this process of being in dialogue with these strange things that I was experiencing really helped me reconnect a lot to what I feel like is my true self and my meditation practice, which I never let go of my practice. I just did it very much more. I had just for years, since my child was born, been doing it much more privately and on my own. And so being in this dialogue really really opened me up to a lot of teachings and and much more connecting my.
Yeah, thanks for
practice
sharing
and
that.
my
I
life.
think so much about, initially, like I said, when I first started hearing voices, I was told they were delusions and hallucinations. And then I have intersected with people who have attempted to put a religious Judeo-Christian sort of framework on top of what it is. These are demons. This is Lucifer's children. Don't talk, don't speak to them. And I don't know, strangely, I don't know, but it first started registering to me, listening to people like you talking about engaging with these beings, with these voices, and the productive and how that's been a productive, beneficial sort of life experience moving forward, which is just sort of an eye opener for me. That's interesting. So talking about your meditation practice and some of those work, I want to make sure that we talk about some of the things that's going on with what you're doing as far as, beyond the hearing voices and this sort of this explorer seeker community. One of the things that you are launching soon and is a dream meditation class, an online dream meditation class, which sounds very exciting. Tell me a little bit about that and when that starts and how people can find out about it. That seems exciting.
Sure. Yeah, that's going to start Thursday, March 11th. It's going to be an 8-week class, but probably I will do it again if I'm thinking that I'll do it again. But the first one is going to start March 11th, and it's going to be an 8-week series. So this is something I've been really engaged with lucid dreaming for my entire life. And I had
Could you explain lucid? When people say lucid, people, I guess, understand maybe dreaming, but I don't know whether people, I don't even know if I understand what people mean by lucid dreaming.
Okay, I'll get to it. So what I'm talking about is I'm kind of talking about a multi-layer practice of first having awareness that you're dreaming, and then with that awareness, having tools to engage with the dream and change the dream. So then as you practice being able to change the dream, and you practice having awareness in the dream, then the dream state itself is this kind of this playground that's more, much more flexible than daily life, and gives you the ability to maybe practice scenarios for daily life, trying how you would approach a situation out in different ways, and rewinding it. in a way, constructing your own mythological landscape.
I
I
love
have
that.
places that
I
I
love that.
have places that I repeatedly return to in dreams, and I know if I'm dropped into one of those places that it's going to be a power place, or a place of purification, or there's this my teacher has this beautiful garden that we drop into to train in very specific ways. So as you practice having awareness of the dream state, and then your ability to change and construct that place, that, I guess, that's technically, that's lucid dreaming, the awareness that you're dreaming.
Oh,
But
okay.
my class, I teach I teach meditation practices for gaining the awareness, and then specific tools for practicing when you're there. But then
Oh, okay.
the really important part is taking all that practice and bringing it in to daily life,
Mhm.
and feeling the similarity between daily life and the dream state, or all these different states of consciousness that we walk in and out of. And the dream state itself is very flexible, but the more you practice in the dream state, the more I think you can feel that flexibility in your daily life, and
Wow.
feel more of that. Um,
That's very
More of
cool.
that ability to construct your life. So it's an 8-week course, and I'm going to teach a bit on all of those things. The way it's structured is that so there's a couple little breaks, but basically the first half is a teaching with some examples of stories from my dream practice. The second part is a guided meditation where I walk you through the practice for the day, and then, well, for the week. And then the third part is going to be like a discussion group where people can talk about their dreams and what's happened in their trying to implement this practice in the past week. So we have a little community and dialogue about people's dreams. And
Good. Does
yeah,
this
for
be a
the
90 minutes or an hour? How long will each
it's 2 hours with a couple little breaks between
okay.
each section.
And it'll be on
Yeah,
Thursday night?
it's going to be on Thursday evenings Pacific time. If people in other time zones are interested in getting it together for another time, we could do that. But the initial series is going to be for 8 weeks at 6 p.m. Pacific time. People can email me about that.
Okay.
I know you're putting my email in all the
Yeah, put it in the chat.
YouTube comments and Facebook comments and
Right,
things like
right.
that.
Yeah. So I'll put it in there.
People can email me. I do, and like I said, I know a lot of people who have been excluded from meditation communities and meditation retreats because of their unusual experiences. And I really want to make my teaching accessible to people who are drawn to the teaching. So there is a cost, but there also are scholarships available. So I really don't want I don't want anyone to feel like they would be excluded because of the cost. So people can email me about that as well.
Okay. So that starts March 8th? Is that right?
That starts March 11th.
March 11th.
But there, yeah, I will. People can email me about that, and there will be, there's registration on my website and on Eventbrite and things like that.
Okay. Very interesting. You're also a few other things. One, you talked about the mythological landscape, and I think it was you who refreshed me and excited me to go study some more Joseph Campbell. You want to talk a little bit about that the Joseph Campbell, that the piece that you sometimes read about its meaning to you, and how you encountered that?
Um, I don't have the book with me here to read from it at this moment. I'd have to go get it. But yeah, I was greatly influenced by Joseph Campbell. I feel lucky to have read his work when I was a teenager. So you're talking about an essay in the book Myths to Live By that I often quote from. And it's called Schizophrenia, the Inward Journey. And in that, in that essay, he talks about, Joseph Campbell's big thing is often talking about the hero's journey from mythology of, going to the underworld and going through a great trial and overcoming it and coming back. And that's also very much linked to the seasons and the pagan cycle of the year and all different types of mythology. In this essay, he talks about the experiences and the journeys that people go on of being very, very similar. And he specifically in the article talks about schizophrenia, LSD, and yoga, and says that they're all the same experience. But the difference is how there is both people's how people respond to the experience, but really whether the experience happens within the context of a supportive community where there's a guide and it's, there's a cultural tradition of people who've gone on this mythical journey and come back and can say to the young person, this is the journey that you're going on, and this is how to swim. Or if you're just thrown in by yourself without that cultural context and without that community. So these essays now are over 50 years old, but that essay I think is from the 60s, might be from the early 70s. It's in a book that's a collection of essays.
Yeah.
They're all getting quite old now, but even back then, he was really concerned with modern society becoming disconnected from these myths and these cycles. So, my whole, I love that essay, and I really believe that, I really do believe that with meditation and psychedelics and or even being in nature and hiking in the mountains, that people people have these experiences that are very similar, and people have been having them throughout history, and it doesn't really matter what mechanism you used to bring on the experience, but people go through similar states and have learning from that they can share with each other, if when they're not afraid to share it. And I also take the inspiration from that of kind of wanting to be, of feeling into wanting to be a mythological figure in my own life. I said I have a protector being, but what my protector being needed from me to be released from some of our karmic bond and to have more freedom in his life, was for me to become more of a protector. And so, I have my bracelet. It says Lion Heart.
Oh, wow.
It's for a song that I love.
Oh,
My
cool.
Lion Heart will light up in the dark.
Oh, wow.
But I love to play my dramatic music for the moment, and dance and visualize myself as this mythic figure, in
Right on.
in whatever way is beneficial for me and the world, and act it out and feel that energy while I dance for a few minutes, and then take a little piece of that energy in with me for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by Joseph Campbell to do that.
One of the things you sort of touched on, I was listening to a Joseph Campbell lecture talk about a book called The Sacred and Profane, and a gentleman's take on where we are in the last 200 years, and so much removal from what is sacred, what might be center, how we orient our life into the Industrial Revolution and into this secular, rational society, that we left something in the hills or in the caves or in the dark or in our dreams or, in our understanding of our own self, that, that I really think is fundamental to, operating holistically and completely as a human being. Sometimes I worry we're in danger of leaving that all behind, or a lot of us are. And that one of the things I really like about Hearing Voices group is no one attacks your framework, as long as you don't put your framework on somebody else. And also too is, as a seeker, to try to find meaning and create meaning for myself that has ritualistic quality that I can return to, like a sense of a touchstone, something particularly. In one of my darkest periods, every day I would accomplish, if I didn't do anything else all day, I would take a penny and walk it to the nearest church and put it on the brick and just say, I'm going to come back here again, put my hand here. I'm making a promise to you and to the, it wasn't a religion I practiced, but I just like the iconography of a temple of worship. And so I did that. And some days that's all I would do. And I would say to myself, I need to go do this. I need to go do this. And became profound. And now when I go by that place, I've moved out of the neighborhood 8 years ago. But every time I walk by that, it's like my heart pulls that, gosh, remember the journey that you were in terrible shape, but you remember you had to do, and that stuff I just find very, very powerful and helps me anchor in some of the places where I've been called delusional, hallucinations, word salad, meaningless, psychobabble, whatever, just all of those sort of things that hurt me and not only did they hurt me, they didn't give me another door. And that is very challenging. I don't, the two other, so you're doing the meditation, dream meditation class on March 11th. So I posted your email so people can email you about that. If people want to learn more about how to participate in the Hearing Voices group, they can email you about that. And also you're doing something at an event, an online event called the Chalice and the Well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is a summit that my great friend Brianna Wonderland is putting on. It's going to start February 24th. It's going to be broadcast on, you have to register, but it is going to be broadcast online for free. Brianna's a psychic, also a spiritual teacher and seeker, and she's also a process worker who works with clients individually. And she's one of my best friends.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, so I'm on her summit, and she interviewed me earlier this week, and so on the summit, she does have me give an invocation and lead a breath exchange meditation practice.
Oh, okay.
So this is a guided breath and meditation practice, and I discuss using this practice to deal with fear and illness, and especially fear of illness. That's very, very relevant to right now, and practicing for friends who are ill. So I do that on, I do that on her summit. And there it's a collection of many great teachers from different traditions, each offering a little practice that.
When can people, so I put the link for the chaliceandthewell.com. When can people go? When does that event start? Or is it
the broadcast is going to start February 24th.
Okay.
But people can go to her website and register for it now. I guess something important to say about that event and my other meditation teachings is, like, I have this lifelong meditation process, and it's really grounded in the concepts of impermanence and altruism that come from the Buddhist tradition. But when I teach meditation, I'm not teaching Buddhism or Buddhist concepts, I'm not really teaching Buddhism for Buddhists. I'm teaching some meditation and self-exploration tools that I'm happy for people to take and join with whatever tradition or practice that they have. I don't teach anything that's from, I don't really teach anything that's from teaching or tradition. I teach things from my practice that I have experienced. I teach how to practice meditation from experience. And
so no matter what framework someone comes in with at a base level, you're teaching them the practicalities of developing a meditation practice and how to instruct them how to set that up.
Yeah. Oh. I'm not teaching religion.
Good. Well,
I'm teaching meditation practice.
Very good. So, and then one of the other things here, I don't know, I put in the chat, I don't know if we have enough time to take a question from the audience or whether you want to answer that, but we also posted the antipsychotic withdrawal.org.com link. Tell us what that is.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a co-investigator on the Maastricht Antipsychotic Withdrawal Survey, which Will Hall wrote, who's the people here might have heard of. He hosts Madness Radio and
It's a great radio
many
show, by
other
the way.
things.
That's a great radio show, Madness Radio.
Yeah.
So you can
So
hear locally on KBOO,
oh, cool.
KBOO.com. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so he wrote the survey, but I am a co-investigator working with the data on the survey, and it's the largest scale survey that's been done worldwide on the experiences of people who are trying to withdraw from psychiatric medication. So if anyone in the audience has tried to withdraw, you don't have to have completed withdrawal. You just need to have tried at
Oh, okay.
some point in time, and it's anonymous, and so we would really like people to take the survey because it's going to give a much larger scale picture on what people experience in trying to withdraw, and how people experience life and cope with some of the things that they might have wanted to take medication for initially after withdrawal. And that's these are things that are known anecdotally in support communities, but there really has been no large scale research on what people go through in the withdrawal process.
So is that survey open
and
currently?
yes, it is.
Okay,
It's still open.
Okay, so antipsychoticwithdrawalsurvey.com, which is interesting. So people can go there and check that out, and they can participate in it if they want to or they feel it's appropriate. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. I don't know, maybe this segues into, there was a question from the Facebook. Do you want me to read it? I put it in the chat here. I don't know whether.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not reading the Zoom chat. I said I'm not like.
Here's the question.
I'm just here to talk. I can't do the finding and sharing links and chatting on multiple platforms at once.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion. I'll read it. Would you feel comfortable telling us what your current psychiatric drug use is? Have you been able to discover this spiritual path while taking psychiatric drugs? And then the person also says there's no need to answer if you don't feel comfortable or don't want to talk about these topics.
Okay, I feel comfortable answering that because I take no psychiatric drugs, and so I've been on this spiritual path for I would say 40 years. I'm about to be 40, though. As I said, I began formally studying in 1996, which gave a lot of structure to what I was able to do. No, I don't take any drugs. I did try. I have withdrawn myself. I have a lot of compassion for myself for why I wanted to try doing that, and I wanted to be more traditionally productive at work and specific things for my family. But luckily, I feel luckily for me, I was only on medication very briefly compared to how most people do it. While I was on medication, I was able to continue my path somewhat. I was able to remain in dialogue with my guide and my protector, but I began very quickly having severe side effects, and it really wasn't very compatible with my spiritual path. I'm someone who draws a lot, and I was drawing a comic for my daughter and her friends every morning, and when I was on medication, I just didn't have the energy for anything. I felt crushed. So that was the really hard thing, that I wasn't able to draw, and I wasn't really able to draw my experiences the way I have come to share them with the wider world. So the medication happened, long after I had been on the spiritual path and was trying to get greater control over my life, but it didn't help me. It just made a lot of things in my life more difficult, and so I'm glad that I stopped quickly. And of course, if people come to our group, we're in the Hearing Voices group, we're totally agnostic about medication. We're not going to try to convince you to use it, and we're not going to try to convince you to get off of it. What we advocate for people to do is to have agency over their own lives, to make a personal decision for themselves, and
that's awesome.
Not for the other people in your life to make a decision for you, but for you to make a decision of what works for your life, and respect that, whatever decision people make.
Yeah, I think that is an underlying just awesome, because it so much intersects with so many other people's, what's convenient for them, or what works, what they think should work for you, and putting it on top of you. Yeah.
But lots of people like me do make the decision to come off, and when I did, there were some resources available, and not a ton, but I think, by doing this research, that there will be a lot more like experiential, data backed guidelines of what has helped people and what has not, if that's a choice that they're making for their life.
Yeah. The Facebook questioner says, thank you so much for sharing. It's good to see people who are able to live successfully with unusual challenges without psychiatric drugs. The pharmaceutical company marketing campaigns make it seem like that never happens. So that's very good. We have about 6 minutes left. So want to make sure, particularly the dream meditation class starts March 11th. That's an 8 session class or 10 session? Remind me again.
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay. And so we put that, I put your Mountain HVN, it's mountainhvn@gmail.com. And so you could email her there for information about her dream meditation class, more information if you have other questions about her participation in Chalice in the Wheel, that you see the link to, if you're more interested in stuff like that. And then we put the antipsychotic survey up there. And then we also put a link to the Psychedelics Madness Awakening.com group. And I guess tentatively or purportedly you are working on some panel or something in the future to participate there. We'll just leave that link there and people can find out more about it at that link. Unless there's anything you want to say about that in your presentation there.
Yeah, I'm also going to be speaking on a panel at that conference if people are interested in that sort of thing.
Okay, so we put the link up there.
This is again part of my part of my work to connect with the the similarity of experience across different communities.
Yeah. Okay. So I put all those links up there, and very excited for this dream meditation class. I'm hoping to be able to join it as well, because I'm just very fascinated with the whole idea of dream architecture, helping to play an active leading role in my own dream state, and how to manifest that throughout my imagination during the waking day part of the day and in my sleep at night. So
that would be great. I'd be really happy to have you.
well, thank you. We have about 2 minutes left. Anything else that you wanted to say? It's really, I didn't know, I became an HVN facilitator and went through a training, but it wasn't until my experience of COVID, the COVID lockdowns and all those sort of things, the digital experience of, it's amazing to me that on a Tuesday Mountain Hearing Voices group, that people return with significant frequency to talk about some of these sort of things, when there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of landing pads in the rest of culture, especially when it intersects with allopathic medicine or even community support groups that are all loaded with framework that you have to swallow and you have to pair it in their glossary. Or people want to tell you, that's not true or that's not right or whatever. And that it's amazing the people, like we said, people from Montana, people from North Carolina, people from the Bay Area. It's just an amazing experience. And it really restored my idea that digital community can have intimacy, can have a sense of significant safety, and be facilitated in a way that respects people's, where people are, where people hurt, and where people don't want to go, which is just really, I think is not just a skill. I think it's also an art. So, and you do a fantastic job at that, in facilitating in that arena. So.
Thank you. Well, I guess I will say something from game theory then. I promised I'd talk about game theory.
Yeah. So I try to avoid that because I can't even explain it at all. I have a 6th grade education in mathematics. So.
Yeah, sometimes I teach game theory at the university also, but game theory was developed by John Nash, who is an inspiration to me and one of history's great voice hearers. So I don't approach the group as someone with clinical training. I approach the group as a game theorist, and game theory is a way of looking at probabilities when different beings are interacting. And so I bring some of the core rules of that to the group. And the first rule of game theory is that every agent, in game theory, it's a model, so that we're all agents, but every person enters the model with their own beliefs. And you don't get to question or change what the other person's beliefs are. Okay. You just note what they are at the beginning of the dynamic process. But that's not something you get to question or change. So everyone gets to come to the group with their own belief, and we're not going to question or change that. Now, each individual's belief can change over time through their interaction with the other people in the group. But we take their belief as a given. The other thing I always bring to the group from game theory that I love is this idea both that everything's possible. So something might have a very, very low probability, but it doesn't have no probability unless that's completely proved. And there are always more possibilities that we couldn't conceptualize. So if we're writing out the whole universe of probabilities and, so what's the probability that, so these are all the ideas that I have for, this thing I'm experiencing and what it can be. So we can't have all my ideas of what it could be add up to 100. There's always some other unknown that we haven't been able to conceptualize out there.
Wow.
And I love the freedom of that.
Wow. Huh. Well, very good. Okay. Well, again, my name's Kevin, and we've been talking to Rachel Flanigan about dream meditation and game theory, and what it's like to be one of the first people on your block to have a terrible case of COVID and the horrible, feel so bad for you. I don't, the people who come out of this with consequential sort of chronic issues, just heartbreaking. So really difficult. And also too, just how to, have such an experience when you run into people's framework and biases where they don't investigate because they have contempt for you based on their framework they're putting on you is also awful. So, Okay, well, thank you very much. So that's it for today. Today is February 13th. This is a live broadcast on Facebook, but also will be on YouTube, and we'll have those links for you soon. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Rachel. Look forward to March 11th for dream meditation classes to begin. I'm very excited about that. And we put your email so people can email you if they want more details and how to sign up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
All right.